What up, everybody?
What's up, everybody?
It's Saturday night, so you know what that means. That means it's time for Have a Conversation After Dark. Listen, if you're watching now or if you're watching the replay, do what it says on the bottom of your screen. Tap the share button and share this with someone. Tap the share button and share this with someone. All
Yes.
right, because we want you to be a part of this conversation. Now, I'm gonna be a little bit honest here. The topic for tonight, um, it's it's not misleading,
No,
but
it's not.
it's kind of it's not misleading. I'm gonna say just right off the bat, and I'll say this throughout. Um, the whole idea around duty sex, I don't subscribe to. Right. So that that phrase duty sex is really just in that graphic for shock value. And we'll talk about it. We're not going to be on long tonight, so uh, you may end up catching the replay if you don't jump in time. But we're going to talk about this for a few minutes because I just want to hear what you have to say.
Me?
Yeah, I want to hear what you have to say, and if there are
Okay.
other people who happen to jump in, I want to hear what you have to say as well. So, uh, if you saw the graphic, I don't know if you saw the graphic. Maybe you did. Maybe you didn't. This is the graphic. Is duty sex a thing? Or is it simply sacrificing to keep your spouse happy? So I'm gonna be honest. The whole the phrase duty sex is really for shock value because I don't subscribe to whatever that means.
Yeah, I was going to say, is it really a thing? Do people say that? Duty
So
sex?
it is a thing. Shout out to Sheila Ray Gregor. She is doing that research and has been doing a lot of stuff with the kind of outing, exposing the church for their stance on some things sexually, with one of them being the ideology that some people have that it's sex is a duty.
Okay.
Like it's you got to do it,
Yeah.
right? That's not necessarily where I'm going with this tonight. What I want to know in terms of what you're thinking is the other phrase as it relates to sacrificing, and I'm using that word again for shock value as well. Sacrificing to keep your spouse happy. Is it wrong to uh is it wrong to have sex simply because you're trying to please your spouse or keep them happy? Let me set it up a different way.
Okay.
Let's say, for example, tonight you don't want to have sex.
Mm-hmm.
You ain't really feeling it. You ain't really in the mood right now,
Mm-hmm.
right? But because it would make me happy, and because you want to please me, you go ahead and indulge. Is that right or wrong?
I I think that hmm, I don't know. I don't think that it's wrong, but here's what I will say. There are times when, and I think this happens a lot to I think this happens to more women than probably we know or they let on or we talk about.
Hmm.
There are times when I am not as eager, I'll say,
Hmm.
as you are,
Hmm.
but I go ahead anyway.
Hmm.
And the reason why I do is because I know that, I believe this is like a Tammy Hill
Hmm.
talks about
Hmm.
it.
Hmm.
One of the therapists that we follow talks about it, that often we may not feel like it initially, but
Hmm.
once we get started,
Hmm.
we're good and we're fine and we're good to go. And so I um if I don't have a valid reason why I don't want to, if it's
Mhm.
just, I don't feel like it, if I'm tired or something like that. I'm not saying that being tired is not a valid reason, but I think that a lot of times when I say that I'm tired,
Mhm.
I could squeeze in a little love making. You know what
Mhm.
I'm saying?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so I think that I think along the lines of I'm just going to go ahead and do it because I know I'll get into it. And like I was saying, Tammy Hill even has said before that that happens with women. It
Mhm.
takes a minute for us to get going.
Yeah. Warm up. Yep.
Yeah, to warm
Mhm.
up. And so I know that, you know, a couple minutes in, I'll be okay.
Mhm.
And so I kind of try to ignore the I don't feel like it tonight most times. But there are times too, though,
Mhm.
when I'm just not up to it. And because of that, my mind is not in the right space.
Okay.
And that's kind of doing you a disservice at the end of the day.
If you say so. if
I thought
you say so. I mean, I
that
and
doesn't.
I get that though. I understand that, and I'm not and I guess where duty sex would come in to play, the concept around duty sex, where that would come into play is if you felt like even if there was a reason why you needed to refrain,
Hmm.
and not oh, if I start I'll get into it, but I just at this point in time this is not where I want to go,
Hmm.
and you go there anyway.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the duty sex piece.
Maybe that's the duty
Oh,
sex.
and maybe because you feel like you have to. Maybe
Say,
that's the duty sex piece.
maybe,
The-
maybe so. Maybe so. But I feel like there are times and there have been times and there
Mhm.
will be times where I'm just not up to it.
Right.
And I can't even give you anything. I
Yeah.
just can't.
Right.
I'm just not up to it.
Okay. So
But
what?
I don't think that I don't agree with I just can't. I'm not up to it. I just can't. I'm gonna go ahead and do it anyway. But my head, I know that this is not the time where I'm gonna get into it
Hmm.
a couple minutes down the road.
Hmm.
This is one of those times where I
You just not
know
there.
I'm just not there. And
Hmm.
if I go ahead and give you some anyway,
Hmm.
that to me might, I guess, might be the definition of duty sex.
Hmm.
And I don't agree with that.
Okay.
I
Okay.
don't.
So the term duty sex in and of itself is already takes, I'm sure it takes people down a derogatory path in terms
Hmm.
of their thinking. And again, that was for shock value. My thing is I feel like it's obvious that duty sex should not be a thing. I mean, it's not a advice show, but duty sex should not be a thing. Like I should not feel like I have to have sex with you regardless. That's what I think when I think duty sex. Regardless of how I'm feeling, regardless of what's going on in our lives, regardless of whether we on the same page, regardless whatever the regardless is, whatever the fill in the blank is that you put in that regardless. I don't think that it's that I should have to, which
No.
is what duty sex is. Now, here's the other side of that coin. The other side of that coin is should you should you, and I'm using this word for shock value because it's the word that was in the graphic, should you sacrifice, should you indulge, if you whatever word you want to put in there that might make it make it palatable for you, should you indulge for the sake of making your spouse happy?
But why do I have to make you happy? Why can't you make me happy by saying, "Okay, babe, I see that you're not into it. You're not
Hmm.
there tonight.
Okay.
Let's try again tomorrow." Why can't that be the thing? Why does it have to be that I have to make you happy?
I mean, that can be the thing, but that's not tonight's topic. That can be next week's topic. Why can't I make you happy? Right now, we're talking about whether you would want to sacrifice or indulge to make me happy. And it wasn't about you making me happy. I was just saying in general, any spouse.
I'm saying in general too, not necessarily you per
Right.
se.
I mean,
I'm saying in general, why is it that the one spouse has to
mhm.
feel like they have to make or make their spouse happy or feel happy? Why can't it be the other way around where the spouse that wants it is like, you know what? I see that she or he is
Mhm.
not there right now, and I'm gonna make him or her happy by just I'm gonna leave it alone. Let's try again tomorrow. I see you not in the right headspace. Why do I have to feel like I have to make you happy?
I mean that's definitely up for debate and argument. I think maybe if we change the wording, I don't know, if we change the wording, it might be the same thing, but not so much me making you happy as much as it might be. Uh, I know this is important to you. I know this makes you feel good. I know this lifts your spirit. I know that this has you floating around the house, and I love that. So I ain't really feeling it right now, but because I love that, I'm gonna go ahead and do it. No?
Probably not. If I'm not in again, if I'm not in the right headspace,
Mm,
I'm not gonna be able to
okay.
just I'll be all right if you're not
So,
floating. I'll wait until I feel like
so, so let me ask this then: how do you know what is an indicator? And we're getting into advice now, which I didn't want to go to, but since it's just me and you talking, how do you decipher, or how would I decipher between when you're not in the right headspace, period,
mhm.
and when you're not in the right headspace, but
But
five
there's some leeway.
right, but 5 minutes in, we swinging from the chandeliers.
I don't know that you would be able to tell that. I think that that is something that I have to be honest and forthcoming
So that's something you got to tell
to
me.
you with you. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know if that you would be able to just tell.
And how do you, and I'm not saying you have to do this, but just for the sake of argument and conversation, how do you articulate that in a way that
It's frozen.
makes sense to me?
How do
Like, I'm trying, let me see if I can reword it. How do you articulate that in a way that allows me to see the difference between the two? Because you can be like, you know what, I'm not really feeling it, but come on, I know we'll be good in just a minute,
Mhm.
right? How do I decipher between, how do I now, even with what you articulate, decipher between that and you telling me the same words but nothing happens? Like, doesn't that, I'm not saying you have to do it every time, but how do you address the confusion that might?
How would you be confused by what I'm telling you? That's not confusing. I'm not feeling it right now. I'm not in the right headspace. I don't feel like I'm gonna it's this is not the time where I feel like I'm gonna get into it a
Okay,
couple
so you
minutes
would
down.
add that
Yeah,
on to it.
I don't
Okay.
yeah, it's not confusing.
Okay.
I would tell you.
All right, that's cool. I obviously this is not about any piece of advice or not, but I wonder how many people
Mhm.
um get tripped up in that space, because there's a thin line between what you're describing. Hey, you know what, I'm not feeling it right now, but um you're all the way there, and I know in about 2 or 3 minutes in, I'll be all the way there too.
Mhm.
I wonder how many people get tripped up with uh experiencing that and then feeling like that's just that has to be the norm in cases where you're not feeling 100%.
Say that again.
How many couples kind of get stuck there with, well, if you can do it, then you should always be able to do it.
Some people might, but then that's two things. Like if I'm telling you, that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to always be able to do it. And then the other side to that is too, I personally am mindful of how many no's I'm giving you within a
Mm,
certain amount of time. And I think our friends John and April said this. We were in a conference together, a virtual conference or something like
mm,
that
mm,
a while ago now. And I think I remember April saying that I don't remember how many times. She might have said two or three if she's given a no, for lack of a better phrase,
mhm,
that many times.
mhm.
Then she's like, I'm
Then
not,
the next one is a yes.
yeah, I'm not going to do that again.
Is that duty sex?
Um, I don't know. I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so.
So for me, right? For me, and yeah, for me, it's interesting because I think it might almost be relative to the couple.
Hmm.
Because here's the thing. If you say, and I'm not saying this is right or wrong,
Hmm.
it is what it is. If you're like, okay, you know what? I've said three no's already. So the next one is a yes regardless.
Hmm.
That seems like duty sex.
Uh,
And I'm saying that for the sake of argument. I don't necessarily think I believe that, but I'm just saying that for the sake of argument. Could that be easily classified as duty sex? Because that means if you said three no's, which means number four is a yes automatically, what happens when number four you ain't feeling it? And the you ain't feeling it is the you ain't feeling it period, not the you ain't feeling it will be good in 5 minutes.
yeah, I don't know. Maybe it is relative to every couple. And maybe it comes up, number four comes up, and you're like, I said I was, but I'm not there. I just can't.
So then that would be number four.
Maybe so. I don't
Okay.
know.
Okay. Listen, so here's the thing. I'm gonna say this because we're not gonna be on too much longer. We'll be on about 10 more minutes. Here's the thing. This show is all about conversation. Anybody who has seen this show, if this is your first time seeing us, we're coaches, authors, speakers. This show in particular is different than the Thursday night show. The Thursday night show have which is inside the relationship. Inside the relationship on Thursdays is a an advice show, right? Tonight's show is really about sparking conversation. And so let me tell you something that we've experienced. We don't know too many couples who have had this conversation. And and the only
Yeah.
reason I'm saying that is because many of the couples who come to us who uh navigating intimacy in a healthy way is one of their goals. This frequency thing is always an issue.
Yes. Yeah.
And the desired discrepancy is
Hmm.
quite often an issue.
Yeah.
So it might not always be frequency. It just might be, man, every time I want it, she don't.
Hmm.
Or every time he wants it, you know, every time she wants it, I don't, kind of
Hmm.
thing. Right.
Hmm.
But I think this warrants a conversation because me knowing that there are times where you in the beginning might not feel it, but you're like, hey, let's dive in because I know 3 minutes in, I'm gonna be hot and heavy,
Hmm.
right? And knowing the difference between that and when there's a period at the end of that sentence, I'm not feeling it.
Hmm.
The only way to know that is through conversation.
The only way to know that is through conversation. Yes. I think too though that we have to like take into consideration what is going on in our lives.
Hmm.
Like if that were us, for example,
Hmm.
you would have to consider what's going on in our lives. I know that Nisi can't turn things off
Hmm.
like I can. This
Mm-hmm.
is you talking.
Mm-hmm.
I know Nisi can't turn things off like I can and just be ready. What are the stressors that what's going on in our life right now
Mm-hmm.
that is making her not even um feel like she's there
Mm-hmm.
in her mind. Like sometimes the stressors might be more heavy than at other times.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that's the difference between, I'm really not feeling it, but I know I'll be okay in a few minutes. So let's go. Let's do
Mm-hmm.
this. And the difference between that and, I just, my mind is just not there. I can't see myself digging myself out of this.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something to consider.
It
Maybe it's
that
the
is some
stressors.
that is something to consider, and maybe for the sake of conversation, maybe the times that you don't feel, maybe the times where you're not feeling it in the moment, but in your mind you're like, you know what, I'm gonna dive in because I know we'll be good. Maybe you don't articulate anything at those times,
Correct.
and that's the differentiator,
Yes. That's a
because
good
then there's
point.
no mixed signals right there,
Right.
right? So I don't even know you wasn't feeling it,
Right.
because 3 minutes in we swinging from the chandelier. So I thought
Yes.
you was good. I would have never
Yes.
known, right?
Honestly, I've done that.
I know you have. I know you have.
So then, then.
Well, no, I'm not gonna say I'm yes, I know then, but that takes a very significant amount of time observing you.
Hmm.
In the beginning, all I just see apprehension,
Hmm.
and I feel some kind of way based on that
Right.
apprehension,
Right.
which
Because
sometimes messes the
you,
mood up completely.
yeah. But
That's early on.
you see apprehension and instead of talking to me and
Hmm.
saying, what's up? What's going on? You know, I see that you're apprehensive. What are you okay? Instead of saying all of that, you just immediately went into rejection mode.
Yeah, I'm nursing my rejection.
You're nursing your rejection.
Nursing my rejection.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, um, yeah. So I think it's a great conversation to have.
Yeah.
If you are married, obviously I would. Well, I'm not gonna say obviously, but I'm gonna assume sex is important to you if you're married, right?
Mhm.
And uh, nobody wants to go through a long season of desire discrepancy. Nobody wants to go through a long season of apprehension around sex, or you know the whole frequency piece, and and all of that. And a great way to keep from going through that for any long period of time is to actually talk about it.
Talk about it.
Like, and it doesn't have to be a hard conversation. Like,
Mm.
you got to come to like there's something on the survey, the not survey, the
The
assessment that
assessment.
that our clients take before.
Hmm.
There's a piece of that assessment that talks about their level of desire,
Yeah.
what is their preferred frequency, and how comfortable are they talking about sex,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And I think that's very important. Like, those
Yeah.
are things you should know, and that knowing that doesn't guarantee. So if I know your preferred frequency is
Fall asleep.
every day, right?
Yeah.
And my preferred frequency is 3 times a week.
Hmm.
That doesn't mean you're going to get your every day, nor does it mean I'm going to get my three
Three
times a
times a
week.
week.
What it does now is open up the door for us to have a conversation, to negotiate something that works for both of us.
Right. Yes.
But you got to know that. Like,
Yeah.
you got to know that my preference is 3 times a week, and I got to know that your preference is every day,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's where the conversation comes in. So,
Hmm.
for those of you who are jumping in and out, if you saw the graphic that said duty sex, that was kind of clickbait a little bit, because clearly I don't believe in duty sex,
Well,
because duty sex means I have duty sex let me tell you what a duty is for me.
Mhm.
A duty is washing the dishes.
That's something you don't want to do. So,
And even if it is something that I don't mind doing, it's not
so it's
it's
a.
not a leisure activity.
Mm,
Like I didn't mind doing the leaves the other day,
mhm.
but that's a duty. That's not, you know what I'm saying? Like sex
Yeah,
and duty can't be in the
can't
same
be in the
sentence.
same
Like not for
sentence.
me. I don't it don't compute.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
You know what I mean? Like I I don't want to do the dishes, you know. And even if I don't gripe and complain about it, it ain't like when I think of, oh, what wonderful thing can I do right now? The dishes is not on that list. Like it ain't on that, you know what I mean? So I don't know I don't know that those two things go together. However, the flip side of that is the other side of that graphic
Mhm.
says that it talks about sacrificing for the sake of your spouse being happy.
Right.
I don't have no problem with that.
You don't have a problem with sacrificing
Yeah, I don't have no problem with that.
for the sake of your spouse being happy.
Right. Meaning, and if we're talking strictly sexually, and just what's up,
What's up, Jay?
just a duty sounds more like a job. Exactly.
Hmm.
Exactly. Like I got to clock in, to have sex and clock out. Right. That does nothing for me whatsoever. Right. But let's say, for example, I'm. Let's say if we're talking about we've discovered what our frequency preference is, right?
Hmm.
And let's say your frequency preference is every day and mine is 3 times a week,
Hmm.
right? Here's where the sacrificing to make your to keep for your spouse to be satisfied and happy comes in. I may say to myself, okay, I'm really good after 3 times a week, but I know that she prefers every day. So I'm gonna slip in an extra day.
That's your sacrifice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's that. Yeah, and I don't see nothing wrong with that. That's not duty sex. That's not me feeling like I have to do you a favor. That's me loving you enough to be like, hey, you know what? I want to do this because this is the result that it gets. Because we do that in other things too. We do that in other areas, don't
Yeah.
we?
Yeah, but then that goes back to what I was saying about, to me, when I hear sacrifice to keep my spouse happy,
Hmm.
I think of, I'm just not in the right headspace,
Hmm.
but I know that he wants it. So let me go ahead and make him happy.
Which is not something you would want to do,
No,
right? Now,
no.
now again, I use the word sacrifice for shock value. The word, it's probably not sacrifice, because if you feel like you're sacrificing something,
That is when it's hard. A
that
sacrifice is something that is difficult for you to
yeah,
give.
you're giving up something that you probably would normally not want to give up for the sake of something else. So sacrifice is probably not the right word, but I use it for shock value.
Mhm.
But I do believe just the whole concept of, man, I love this woman and I want her to be satisfied, and so here's what I'm going to do. And the here's what I'm going to do may be outside of the scope. That's not going to fit on
Oh,
yours. The here's what I want to do might be outside of the scope of what I would normally do. And that's cool. I'm cool with that. I'm not saying that y'all should be cool with that.
mm,
I'm saying Oliver Marcel is cool with that,
okay.
which is why I said earlier, maybe this whole thing is relative.
I think it is. I think it is relative.
Maybe it's all relative.
Yeah, I think it is relative.
I don't know if I agree with that portion, being as
Being
though,
as though we're talking about sex, I feel like if you don't want to do it and you're sacrificing, that would transpire through the work, wouldn't
probably,
it?
probably,
Yes.
probably.
Yeah.
And again, just I'm using that word just for shock, just for the sake of argument, just to spark conversation. But
Yeah.
you wouldn't be sacrificing, because again, that the connotation around sacrificing is that I'm actually giving up something that I probably wouldn't normally give up, whether it be my time, my energy,
Well, what
my
word would you
whatever.
use then? If you are giving, if you are, if
But
I feel like, I'm trying to read it. I don't know what's wrong with me today. I can't read.
If you feel like you
I
don't want to
feel
do it.
like if you don't want to do it and what words would you put in there then? You do it anyway.
But
That's
he,
still sacrifice.
but there, and here's the thin line, and this is why conversation is important. You talked about two very different frames of mind for
Mm-hmm.
you specifically. You talked
Mm-hmm.
about the frame of mind where you're not really there 100%, but you know that you will be.
Mm-hmm.
That's not, I don't want to do it. The other frame of mind with the period at the end of I ain't into it, you don't want to do it.
Right.
The first one, you want to do it, you just not.
Yeah, I'm not talking about that.
And that's what I'm saying. So for that, right? For
Mm-hmm.
what Justin was talking about, if you don't want to do it and you do it anyway, like if you just flat out don't want to do it and you do it anyway, then yes, you're sacrificing something and it is going to show up. It is going to show up in the lovemaking session because you're going to be you ain't going to be all the way there.
Yeah. Let's put up this comment by
Mm.
Facebook user. I wish I knew who it was. It is your duty so your spouse not fall into temptation. The wife hath not power over her own body, but the husband. And
That's
likewise
First
also
Corinthians.
the husband hath
So
not power over his own body, but the wife.
so I hear you, Facebook user, and that's the First Corinthians 7 passage. Now, it's not an advice show, but I'll go there. Um, we gotta be careful with that though,
We gotta be careful with that.
because we've seen that First Corinthians 7 passage weaponized to force people to do stuff that
They
they
can't
ain't really
do
trying to do
even.
right now.
Yeah. And we gotta be so careful with that
So
scripture.
so here's the other side of that, right? The other side of that is there once we make this covenant, we are covenanting to be that, whatever you want to put in that, for each other. We're covenanting, we're in covenant to love each other. We're in covenant to support each other. We're in covenant to give our bodies to each other, right? The danger in that passage though is that we sometimes use that passage to say you gotta have sex with me,
Mm-hmm.
and the the other side of that dangerous piece is that you gotta have sex with me so that I don't have sex with her,
Mm-hmm.
which can really teeter on the line of manipulation,
Absolutely.
right? And
Absolutely.
that's why we got to be careful with that with that verse, with that passage of scripture.
Yeah.
That passage of scripture is 100% correct. I most certainly have given over my body to her, and she has most certainly given over her body to me in this covenant because we have become one.
Mhm.
And all that that means on the on all ends of the spectrum, sexually and on the other end of the spectrum, are all valid.
Mhm. Mhm.
We just got to be careful that we're not using that to we're not weaponizing that.
Yeah.
We just got to be careful.
Yeah.
So, and you got to know your spouse, because you might be able to use the word duty with your spouse and it not trigger something that is negative.
Mhm.
But you can't blanket that for everybody,
Correct. Yeah.
you know. And then, again, that's the conversation you got to have.
Yep.
That's the conversation you got to have with your spouse. Hey, listen, here's how I feel about this. I feel like because we're in covenant, here's how we should approach this. And your spouse can be like, "Yeah, I agree with you," or "Hey, how, can we tweak that a little bit?"
But there are some people who think ain't nothing to discuss because the scripture
There,
says
there are
it's
some
your
people.
duty.
There are
The
some people.
scripture says that you don't have no power over your body. I have power over it. And I don't have no power over my body. You got power. It's nothing to discuss.
Yeah.
There are some people that's like, this is scripture. It says that you supposed to have sex with me so that I'm not tempted to go have sex elsewhere,
Yeah.
which I understand. And that is a thing. But
Yeah.
it does teeter, or it does it the scripture
Hmm.
does not teeter on the line of manipulation,
Hmm.
but people do.
Yeah.
People teeter on the line of manipulation. The scripture is very clear, but people can manipulate their spouse with that scripture. And
Yeah.
that's not the purpose of the scripture
Yeah.
at all.
So yeah, and that's the thing. It's here's what I've told people in the past about that scripture. Um, study that, like study it, like
Mm,
go look up the words,
yeah.
look up the words in Greek and Hebrew. Um, look at the context around what Paul was talking about and who he was talking to. Just do some digging. That's and I'm not leading you one way or the other as it relates to that scripture. I'm just saying do some digging because
Hmm.
what it will help holistically.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Justin said, for me, the scripture emphasizes mutual respect, consent, and care in maintaining
Maintaining the
the marital
marital
relationship.
relationship, advocating for a balance that supports both partners' needs and strengthens their bond. I agree with that. How I agree with that.
Hmm.
I agree with that.
Okay,
But I can't stress how much people do not look at it that
they
way.
don't, and that's how we started this in the beginning
Mhm.
when we mentioned
Right.
Sheila Ray Gregor.
Right.
That that's
Require.
that's a lot of what she's talking about. You know what I
Correct.
mean?
Yep.
That a lot of that scriptures like that have been weaponized
Yeah.
to for people to be like, hey, you got to do that.
You got to do it. It's
You
right
my
here.
husband, so you got to do that. You my wife, so you got to do that.
Hmm.
Now, you're my wife, so you got to do that is very different than um, you're my wife, and I pray that you want to do that because you're my wife.
And let me see what's going on. What's the environment like, the stressors? And I keep going back to that
Hmm.
because for women, for wives, that is really a thing.
Yeah.
And when that scripture is taken out of context and people are just like, you got to do it, that's the end of the story, they don't consider
Hmm.
the well-being of their spouse.
Hmm.
They just are like, well, it says that, you don't, I have ownership over your
Hmm.
body and you have ownership over mine. They
Yeah.
don't consider the well-being of the spouse that they're saying, you
Hmm.
got to have sex with me because it's right here in
Hmm.
scripture.
Yeah.
So,
Um, I've been on the receiving end of that bullet before.
mm,
Wow.
mercy.
Facebook user said exactly, Denise.
Mm,
So, and the reason why I say study that verse, right? And I don't want to get stuck here too long with the verse, but reason why I say study that verse is because you got to also look at what was happening in Corinth at that time, right? So I just pulled up
correct.
something real quick, and it was talking about how um, in Corinth, the Corinthian church, there was a group in the Corinthian church that actually thought it was actually holier
Hmm.
and more spiritual
Hmm.
to refrain from having sex with their spouse.
Hmm.
So hence, hey, wait a minute, hold on, wait. In covenant, you gave your body to this person,
Right.
and they gave your body. You know what I'm saying? So you got to look at,
Yeah.
you got to kind of look holistically about that.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm saying just take some time to kind of look through that and really put that in its proper context
Yeah.
because it is true.
It is true.
It's just been weaponized in a way that is not true.
It's been used in the wrong way
Yeah.
often, not all the
So
time, often.
yeah, because that's it's when you're in contract with somebody, there are duties attached,
Hmm.
right? When you are in covenant with somebody,
Mm.
there is a um what's the word I'm looking for? There's
Ser- service? Not
not
necessarily.
necessarily service, but there's a desire is the word I was looking for. So
Mm.
when there's contract, when you have a contract, there's duty involved.
Mm-hmm.
I got to do this. When you're in covenant, it's desire. I want to do this.
Mm.
That's a really big difference.
Yeah.
That's a really big difference. That's why some people go to work all day long and work a job they hate because they got to do it.
Mm-hmm.
They got to do it. They signed an agreement saying I'm gonna show up to work every day, and if I do, you're gonna give me this money,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then there's some people who get up every day and they want to do what they are doing. They're
Yeah.
passionate about it.
Yeah.
They're going to do it not because they feel like it's an obligation. They're going to do it because their passion has tied them to this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a very different thing, right?
Yeah.
And then you don't have to have this conversation about, well, you got to do and you got to do because you already want to.
Yeah. You already want to.
You already want to because
Like,
you're in covenant. You already want
yeah.
to.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And in the times where it's not feasible, those times aren't going to be looked at as, oh, well, you don't want to no more. No, that's just the normal progression of life.
Life.
Like,
Yeah.
ain't nobody having sex 24 hours a day that I know of.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you know, people front like they having sex all the time, but people ain't having sex like that all the time. Shout out to Mike Dortch in the comments.
Hey.
Can marriage be considered a
Conventional contract. Mm, I mean, I guess to some people it could be.
it could be to some folks. It could be.
Yeah.
And
But
I could see why I could see that being the case in marriage. I definitely could see that. Now, is it conducive to um is it conducive to holistic health? Like a holistic healthy marriage? I don't know.
I mean, this day and age, I think that a lot of people do consider marriage to be a conventional contract, but
It's just correcting.
sorry,
Conventional. Um
conventional. Conventional. What?
he was correcting what he said. So he said conventional. What did you
And
say in
then
the
he
other one?
changed it to
Conventional.
conventional.
Oh, what is conventional? I thought you meant conventional.
I'm confused.
If you meant conventional, then um I can see that. Here's the thing, right? In today's day and age, we can view marriage a whole lot of ways because we have
That's what I'm saying.
there's a whole lot of there's a whole lot of ideology around what marriage could be now,
Right.
right?
That's what I'm saying. In
Um
this day and age, I'm sure a lot of people do consider that marriage can be
the the question though that you got to
conventional.
answer is the end result that you get. Oh, he said, oh, okay. So he
Oh,
did mean something different.
covenantal. Covenant?
Yeah, covenantal. Can it be a covenantal contract? Meaning, can it be
A covenant
a
and a contract.
so all right. So with that being clarified,
Sorry,
the
Mike.
answer to that question is yes. Now, here's where we got to be careful with the semantics of the words, right? The
Mhm.
answer to that question is yes, it can be. And it is whether we believe it is or not, it is, right? Because if you think about it, I'm in covenant with you, right? Because I'm in covenant with you, there are certain things that I'm going to do.
Mhm.
Now, I could look at those dues, those list of dues, as contractual things, because if I don't do them, I break covenant.
Right.
You see what I mean? So you you could you could do that, right? And Facebook user said, so is covenant and contract the same? Covenant and contract is not the
Not the
same.
same.
But to speak to Mike's question,
Can they be merged?
there are aspects of the two that are going to be infused in your marital relationship.
Mm.
For the mere fact that, here's a great example. You have covenanted yourself to your spouse. Part of that covenant is that you are going to be faithful. So now, if you are not faithful, if you end up cheating on your spouse, that is grounds for that covenant. That covenant can be broken from a legal perspective.
Mm.
So that's what I mean when I'm saying there are aspects of the two that are always going to be present in your relationship just because of how we live our lives here. Now, if we're talking purely spiritual, the two are never going to be the same.
Right.
And there may not even be aspects of the two that are intertwined.
Yes.
Because here's and this is I'm not going here after I say this, but I'm just using this as an example. If we're talking purely spiritual, right? Because of the fact that part of the covenant calls for me to be able to love you uh in a way that doesn't keep record of wrong. If we're going to talk about Corinthians, then if you wrong me, that's not grounds for breaking the covenant.
Mm.
If we really gonna keep it a buck. I know people don't like to hear that, and we don't live like that in this day and age. But if we're really keeping it a buck, that's you know.
Mm.
But that's a show for another time. That's a show for another time. And number two, not only number one is it a show for another time, but number two, I'm not no, and will never claim to be no biblical guru. So I'm not. No worries, man. No worries. No monkey wrench. It's it's everything is good. Yeah, anything can be talked about. No monkey wrench. I'm just saying, me personally, that's that's a long topic. That's a long topic. But to answer your question, Mike, your specific question,
After we
it
cleared it up.
yes, it can be considered that. It can.
Mm.
It can. The question is what side are you leaning towards?
Mm.
Because what side you're leaning towards is really going to color how you deal with issues in your marriage. It's going to color how you resolve conflict. It's going to color how you
Yeah, I
it's going to color the decisions you make based on the scenarios that come up in your relationship.
yeah,
How you lean.
yeah.
So
I I personally I just feel like it's strictly a covenant.
it is a
I don't
covenant. We don't live that way because it's hard to live that way. If you're really being honest, it's hard to live that way. Because if you think about what it talks about with love in Corinthians, right? And if you think about what it talks about in terms of marriage in Ephesians, like it's hard to live that way. We don't all consistently live that way, right? Me not talking crazy, uh, me being patient, me being kind, me being long suffering, me not taking record of wrong. Like we don't really. That's the ideal, but we don't always do that. You know what I mean? So if I flip that back into the sex conversation, the 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 covenant piece as it relates to the sex conversation now governs your desire more than your duty. Facebook user, at least one of them is Bavobo because I can see your phone. So shout out to Bavobo. We can't see your name on here, but I
That
can see your
is
name on the phone.
Bavobo. What's
Thank
up,
thank you for being here.
Bavobo?
Shout out to Bavobo. But if I
I
handle my
handle my
marriage
marriage as a contract. If I don't like the terms, I should have been out a long time ago. And
exactly
that's what I'm saying. That's why I think that it's strictly a covenant.
right.
I believe that it's strictly a covenant. But as a covenant, there are boundaries and expectations.
Yeah. And here's the thing, right? Again, we can kind of go through the semantics of the word because there's boundaries and expectations in a contract too. The difference in a contract is a contract. I don't have to be emotionally invested in a contract.
Mm.
The contract just has to benefit me. That's it.
Mm.
If you and I are in a contract negotiating, we're trying to set up the terms of the contract. I don't have to like you. I don't have to know you. We don't have to be friends. I don't have to have no connection to you. I don't have to have no spiritual connection to the deal. None of that. I
Mm.
just need to know that at the end of the day, when I walk away from the table, I benefit, period. And the moment that I don't have no connection to you, no way.
Mm.
So I'm out. And I'm going to sue you because I wanted a benefit and I didn't get it. You
Sue you.
you can't do that in covenant. That's
Mm.
not what covenant is not that. You know what I mean? So that's the thing. So uh facts, no emotional ties, none whatsoever. None whatsoever. Duty sex is still an aspect that must be discussed. Emotional intimacy. Yeah, so the duty sex piece, right, is, and this is just me. This is me speaking, from based on the conversation we started earlier, right? Interestingly enough, I say we was going to be on 10 minutes. It's been 30. But it is going to be 10 minutes literally now, though. So the duty sex piece, right, is the duty sex and everything that it entails is outside of covenantal marriage.
Yes.
It is outside the realms of covenantal marriage.
Yeah.
Duty sex and all that it entails is contractual.
Mm.
It is because you said you were going to be who you said you're going to be, you got to do what I say you got to do.
Mm. Yeah.
Right? You would not have to even discuss anything around duty sex if we were intentional about becoming one
Mm-hmm.
from a covenantal perspective,
Yeah.
because you would desire to do the things
Mm.
that create the oneness. So it wouldn't be a chore. It wouldn't be, oh, you got to do this, you got to do that. You're going to want to do it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of my thing. And emotional intimacy, I agree with that. That's a component of creating the atmosphere that is conducive to holistic intimacy,
Right.
because that's the next thing. And we didn't talk about this at all. So I'm glad that you brought that up, emotional intimacy, because we're often going directly to try to unpack and dissect the sexual piece of this when no foundation has been made.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you all who are watching have heard me say this, but I know our clients hear me say this all the time, and our group coaching folks hear me say this all the time. Sex is like the roof of the house.
You're right.
And I have never seen anyone build a house from the roof down. It's always from the foundation up. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. If you've seen that happen, then hey, show me. But I've never seen it, which means there are some things that have to happen from a foundational standpoint. And if those things are happening from a foundational standpoint, that eliminates the duty sex piece altogether.
Yeah. Yep.
Make sense?
Yeah.
All right. With that, I gotta go, folks. Because I have a duty.
You do not have a duty.
And I like it. So it's not a chore. It's doesn't, you know, I'm happy about
Say goodnight to the people.
it. Listen, thank you for those who are in the comments. And let me say this. I didn't say it in the beginning, but normally I say this at the beginning, at the end. Conversation is a catalyst for learning. Conversation is a catalyst for growth. Conversation is a catalyst for bonding, right? So this would be a great conversation for you to have with your spouse.
Yeah.
Because you'll learn something about how they think, and you might be able to craft some strategy that allows you to really do this thing in a way that is going to be great for you.
Yeah.
Right? Justin said, put in that work.
Justin, do not encourage him.
Mike said, duty sex leads to disappointment as
Ooh.
there are expectations of one
don't
Yeah.
appear to
Yeah.
consider the
Yeah.
feelings.
Yeah. And that's what
Exactly.
Nisi was talking about earlier.
Exactly.
Yep.
Like my well-being.
Yep. That's exactly what you were talking
Yep.
about earlier.
Yep.
Yep.
That
Agreed.
bingo.
100%.
Yep.
Agreed. 100%, man. Definitely. Listen, we're going to get out of here. For those of you who are new to us, please subscribe. If you're on YouTube, if you're not on YouTube, follow us wherever you are watching this. Thursdays, we have a great show on Thursdays called Inside the Relationship. Is this Thursday the sex therapist?
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yes.
yeah.
Tanique
Yeah.
Gentles.
So you got to be with us Thursday, 7 p.m. Tanique Gentles, sex therapist, is going to be our guest for that show. That's going to be a good one. So be with us on there. Those of you who want to be a part of this last cohort, we got to set a date. I'm gonna put out a date this week.
Yeah.
For the last cohort for the year for Make Love Better 6-week group coaching experience.
We really should have started already.
We should have
If you
started
think
already.
think about
It's gonna go into the new year probably, especially because it's holiday time. So
yeah, that's what
we'll
I
probably
was
end up
thinking.
going into the new year for that.
Yeah.
Now, that is not just about sex. That's a play on words. That's
Right.
making your love holistically better.
Yeah.
And really going through your marital experience, being able to communicate on an extraordinary level, recognize, manage, and recover from conflict in record time, and to build a holistic, intimate bond. So, all right. Good night to you, Mike,
Good
as well.
night,
Thank you for
Mike.
being here, man. Appreciate you. We're going to get out of here. Have a great rest of your Saturday night. Have a fantastic rest of your weekend. And listen, guys, the whole goal of this is to have a conversation. So
Have one.
have a conversation. Peace out.
Good night.